Well, good day, ladies and gentlemen. You are an Unfiltered podcast with Pastor Jason Gaszak, and we've got an exciting podcast for you today, an exciting show. We have a special guest that's on, and I just want to encourage you immediately when you're hearing this to go and hit that share button and share this with everybody you know. And then also subscribe to this YouTube channel. You're not going to be disappointed. We talk about social, political, and biblical topics from a pastor's perspective. And if you didn't understand the show being unfiltered, it's because I do things on this show in an unfiltered way, which means I don't have any notes. I literally I have like little bullet points of things that somebody wants me to talk about, and I talk about them from what's ever on my mind and what's in my heart in the moment. And so sometimes it becomes very unfiltered. But today I have a guest with me, and I want you to welcome my guest. It is Hannah Kelly. She's with us today. I've not really officially met Hannah in person. The only time I've met her is like literally probably 2 minutes ago on this call.
Yeah.
But I know about her because she is the cousin of a very good friend of mine. His name is Kelly Rhodes. He was on my show a few months ago when we talked about the Stronger Men's Conference. He is a pastor at Life Point in Lebanon, Missouri, and this is a relative of his. And he said, hey, man, you need to have her on your podcast to talk about Amendment 3. And that is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Amendment 3. This whole podcast is nothing but Amendment 3 because Hannah and I are super passionate about this amendment in the aspect of saying no to it, right? Saying no. So, Hannah, tell us a little bit about yourself. And we'll just ask the two questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us what you do for a living.
Absolutely. So thank you, first of all. This is a huge privilege. I've been excited about this for weeks now. You guys were very patient at waiting for me to get back with you. So I am a realtor here in Mountain Grove, Missouri, and I share a business with my sister. And it's because of that job function, shall we say, that I have the freedom to be able to ask for the opportunity to serve in public office. And so I'm just finishing my 8th year in the Missouri House, and have loved every minute of it. It's crazy. I'm sure you've experienced this. I haven't got to know you well yet to know even your background. So I look forward to hearing how many years you've pastored. I always think it's fascinating to hear, when did you surrender to God's call and all that. So I look forward to that conversation. But basically 8 years in the Missouri House has built a fire in me of making sure that the voters coming after me, the generation coming after me, understands the value and importance of citizen Christian involvement in government, that the two must and can correlate, that we don't have to keep silos between our faith and between our government and our structure and what's happening within our government. Because as you discussed, we're dealing with the reality of Amendment 3, and I strongly believe it is a byproduct result of folks sitting on the sidelines, and that's one of the million reasons why I'm so thankful for Kelly and thankful for pastors like yourself and many others who are standing in the gap and saying, hey, we've got to start talking about this stuff. We've got to articulate it on the public square and show people that that the silent majority is silent no more.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's crazy is right before this, Sunday, as I was speaking my message, I had my my father-in-law, who's the founding pastor of this church, came up to me after the first experience, and he said, I just read an article that told me that 35 million Christians will not be voting in this year's election. And so today I thought, I'm going to actually look this up and kind of fact check, not that he would feed me a lie. That's just not his character. But I wanted to see what the real number was. And on October the 8th, the Arizona Christian School with Dr. Barna did a research on this particular topic, and I was absolutely floored at the number. 104 million Christians do not plan on voting in this election. 41 million of them are actually Christians like you and I, ones that go to church regularly. We believe in salvation and sin. We're regular churchgoers. 41 million of those Christians are also, of the 104, will not be voting in this election. And I got to be honest with you, man, those people are a part of this problem.
Yes, 100%. I have one of my new, I've learned, I'm sure you feel the same way with your experience with the podcast and pastoring and everything. The shorter you keep the message, the faster you grab the audience, as long as you've got the right words in the and the
Yeah.
shorter, right?
Yeah.
And I have taken to saying every chance I get, if the church votes, this is defeated.
Yep.
It's not if John Q. Public, that hasn't been to church in 3 months, votes,
That's
even though
right.
we hope he does and we hope he votes against it.
Yep.
But if the church will vote,
Yep.
we
That,
will defeat the effort to basically put murder in the Constitution.
yeah. Yeah. So why don't you just tell us your involvement? So what I just want to make one thing clear. You're a state rep, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm the
Okay.
state representative for District 141.
Perfect. And you have a part to play in fighting against this. Can you just share a little bit of what your involvement is so that people know? And
Yes.
then we're going to
Yeah,
dive into the biggest issues with this amendment.
absolutely. So a little bit of quick background about why I care so much. I was blessed to be born and raised in a Christian home, got saved in my early 20s, and began to understand what was happening at the state government level and how we as Christians, somebody's got to stand up, somebody's got to go forward and hold the standard. And my family's always been involved in levels of politics and different ways of service. And if you ask anybody, they will tell you I was not the person, including me. Like this was not the plan, but
Yeah.
that's sometimes I find how God's sense of humor is. But anyhow, in 2016, I ran for state rep and won by 45 votes,
Mm.
and have been very blessed to have the trust of people since to be able to remain in office for the duration of 8 years. I'll be term limited at the end of this year. Back, I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago. It would have been 4 years ago. 4 years to a little more than that. I was part of a team of members of the House that helped to pass the bill that set us up for when Roe v. Wade got overturned.
Okay.
So how we structured the bill was we basically said, hey, if Roe v. Wade overturns, Missouri goes to one of the most pro-life states in the nation.
Absolutely.
And so that was an incredible experience. And at that point in time, I knew why this mattered. I knew it up here,
Yeah.
right? And somewhat here, but it became even stronger for me as a heart matter. How I totally, sorry, I lost it there for a minute.
That's okay.
It came stronger to me, even is so much more than just a political platform for me. The night that we passed that bill in the Senate, because I had helped to put a piece of language in that bill that basically said that you cannot make money off of aborted babies if you are a medical researcher. Okay. And the Democrats wanted it out. That was one of the main things they wanted out before they would stand down and let the bill pass. That then in turn helped us to turn into the best pro-life state, one of the best pro-life states in the nation.
Yeah.
And that night when that happened, it became very clear to me the fight that this is.
Yeah.
And that God is in control, and Hannah Kelly can't be in control and mustn't be even think that I can be in control. But if I'm willing to go, perhaps he can use me. And so from that point, I've joined in several lawsuits over the last year to 2 years. The most recent one being with the Thomas More Society, where we tried to get Amendment 3 off the ballot.
Yep.
And so we went to the lower court in Jefferson City, and it was such a great day because I didn't know, nobody knew, of course, what was going to happen. And I kind of figured that we would fail right up front because there seems to be such a push for this.
Mm-hmm.
And God really convicted me about my lack of faith and focusing my heart and my thoughts towards what if he does help this come through,
Right.
And well, we had a victory in the lower court.
Yep.
And the judge said, take it off. But, and I got to make sure I say this right here. Basically, he said, I agree with the reasons why we wanted it off. But he said, I'm going to basically wait and let you appeal. Well, they appealed to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, as we know, kept it on the ballot.
Yep.
And so here we are. But I love how you entered into the podcast talking about Unfiltered and the mission behind your podcast. Life is so full of staged, scripted people who are told what to do, and they don't. And people out here running around don't. There's a lot of people that I know right now. They can't even really tell you why they're for Amendment 3.
Absolutely. Oh,
They just know that it's the popular thing to do. And the day that the Supreme Court kept, handed down the decision to keep Amendment 3 on the ballot, there was an elderly gentleman who I had seen in the Capitol, off and on over the years. He was there that day. And unbeknownst to me, he wanted Amendment 3 to stay on the ballot. And he was kind of, he was using his First Amendment right. And he was kind of getting a little verbally aggressive. And I was doing my best to breathe deep and, practice my Christian values and not say what I was thinking, right? But it hit me because I had just found out, I had just gotten the message that, hey, we lost. And I was sitting in one of the committee rooms and the guy turned around and he was like, "You see this? You lost," And it hit me, the enormity of the sadness of it.
Yeah.
Because he has the right to disagree with me. I don't expect everybody to agree with me.
Right.
I wasn't born yesterday. But I sat there, and as I tried to work through my own frustration, I began to think about how God has blessed me with a Christian foundation where I know that life begins at conception. I know that it doesn't matter what a Supreme Court says. It doesn't matter what, who wants to call babies formed by God's hand blobs of tissue. It doesn't matter what people try to make into a reality. I know the truth.
Yeah.
And I have a responsibility to the truth, but there's also freedom in that responsibility because of God's word and what we know are his promises and all of those wonderful things. But anyway, that day when he was holding that phone in front of my face, once I got over myself, I began to just focus on the fact of, Hannah, you got to go make sure more people know, because I still believe that if that man knew what I know because of the privilege of the life that I've been given of knowing God's truth and knowing love and knowing stability and knowing the value of every life. Every life has value.
Yeah.
Because good. I know that, I have a responsibility to make sure that more people do. And so I appreciate getting to come on today. I went in circles here, but you asked me to summarize on the background of where we're at.
Yeah, no, and I want to say this. I think the people need to understand you've served, 4 terms?
Yes,
this
sir.
Would be the 4th one, which you're terming out. But they need to understand that you've had to be elected each time that you ran. This isn't something that you got to stay in and just get to be a part. I think that's a huge deal because a really close friend of mine, Brian Nieves, I don't know if you remember him being
Yes. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so he's a very good friend of mine. He goes to church here. I know a lot about that, and I don't think people understand how challenging that is. And the second part of that is we have a very liberal Supreme Court in the state of Missouri, unfortunately.
Yes.
And the bad thing is they don't have a term limit.
Correct.
And that is the very difficult part of what we're dealing with. And the sad part also is their job is to uphold the Constitution more than anything. And a lot of times people's views and values kind of get filtered in there of those choices.
Oh, it's so true.
And Hannah, you don't know. I don't know if you know this about me, but I do want to just share this part of my story and the reason why I'm very passionate about it, other than me being a pastor and a Christian and doing what God tells us. But even more personally, well, my wife and I was dating my wife, who is a pastor's daughter. We literally met when she was 10 and I was 12 in the church, okay, which is very young, but we liked each other, so to speak. When we got a little bit older, I was just graduated out of high school. She was a junior. We started dating again. And then when she became a senior, we got pregnant. So here I basically knock up a pastor's daughter in a small community. I was very embarrassed. She was too. And what we did is we said, hey, we can fix this and nobody has to know. And we literally called an abortion clinic in the state of Illinois and had an appointment set up to have our oldest child aborted. It still makes me a little emotional. I've said this story how many times, but it just the thought of it, right? And thankfully, Aaron and I, we talk about this because we didn't tell anybody this until about a year ago. About a year ago, we finally came out. We've been married 28 years. We finally came out and told everybody this part of the story because of the abortion deal. Roe v. Wade, when it was returned, that next Sunday, I talked about my story because I wanted people to know why it was so important. Thankfully, God did something. I don't know what he did, but he somehow kept us from going over there. Something came up to where we could not make it happen. And when that happened, my wife and I knew in that moment that we were making a wrong decision. God had his hand in it, and he basically said, nope, I'm not going to let this happen to you, and you're going to be okay. Pretty much the way God talks to me is suck it up. You're going to get through it type thing. And we did.
Yep.
We
I'm
did
glad I'm
get
not
through
the
it.
only one.
And so here, my son's 29 years old, and he's the chief operating officer of our current church here. His wife is actually Kinsey, the one you've been speaking with, who's in the podcast room today.
Okay, yeah.
And I just think about, what would life look like without him? Yeah. And I get it, right? These people, it's so sad because what happens is the people that are voting for Amendment 3 is all they think about is it's a woman's right, and it's all about the woman and her right. It's her body. And I'm just so sick and tired of hearing that excuse because that's exactly what it is. And they want to use, it's for medical purposes. Well, we got to protect the mom from dying and having birth. And I'm thinking to myself, it's less than 1% anyway. And the truth of the matter is the majority of abortions are because of irresponsibility like I had 29 years ago. And I had fear. I didn't know what to do, didn't know how I was going to do all this. And that was the easy way out. And that's what we see today with abortion is everybody wants to take the easy way out. And so there's a lot of proactive things we can do or we try to do to teach people not to get in that position. But this is why this abortion amendment for me is so strong in my heart is to help people like myself to say, listen, I want to come alongside of you and we'll help you. We'll pray with you. We'll do what we got to do to help you get through this, but you don't need to do it alone. And you need to know there's people out there that love you. Yes. And so I just wanted you to hear that part because I know we hadn't talked, so you didn't know any of my story, but that was a big deal.
Glad you shared that with me.
Yeah. So I want you to tell me, being so involved with this, what are the things that you see that it's not just about the, so what you said was we're the most pro-life state in the nation, but if this bill passes, we're going to be the most pro-choice state in the nation. The complete opposite.
Yes.
I mean, it's terrible. Tell us.
So a big deal that I want to point out, and here I tell people all the time, like, listen, I wouldn't know this if I probably wasn't in politics, because what is everybody trying to do? Just pay your bills, trying to stay head above the water, get the kids to church on Sunday, and to hope that the week works out and you can push repeat on Monday.
Yeah.
But when you're voting on an amendment, first of all, you are changing the Constitution.
Yep.
You are changing the Constitution. And what you have to understand is in order to change the Constitution differently than what you may be voting on with any given amendment, you've got to go back to the ballot.
Yes.
The legislature cannot fix this.
Yep.
And it's full if it passes. And which makes the work that you and so many others are coming together to do so vital and so important. But it's going to change the Constitution. First thing, do you want the legalization of abortion up to late term in the Constitution? That's a question that all of us have to answer.
Right. Yep.
And my answer is no.
Right.
The second question that I've got is, do we really want to define abortion as health care in the Constitution? Because that's what happens if this passes. It clearly defines abortion as health care. And in that first section of the 2-page amendment, it says healthcare shall be blah, 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 blah. And it says including but not limited to. And those of us who, like myself, have had the gift of serving for the last 8 years hold a great concern that you will see, if this is passed, you will see gender transition conversations pouring into the funnel of those 4 words in a way that a majority of Missourians have great concern about. And additionally, past that, and this is a big key, that needs to be understood. In Amendment 3, if you pass Amendment 3, you are changing the term of the definition of what fetal viability means.
Mm.
And that's something that people are not catching, I'm finding. Because if you notice, it says the legislature shall be able to regulate at the point of fetal viability. You're like, some people that I've talked to are going, but what nobody's noticing that thinks they're okay with that is the fact that when you get to the end of Amendment 3, it changes the definition of fetal viability to the end of pregnancy, more or less, by saying that the baby is only viable if it doesn't need medical assistance, medical intervention. Well, good grief. I mean, I've got 20 nieces and nephews, and I can tell you a majority of them have landed in the NICU for more than a week, in the beginning of their life. And it doesn't make their life any less valuable, and doesn't make them any less of a person. And it doesn't give any good reason to take their life. Yeah. And so there's that. And so then we go into the conversation of, you were talking about how they're saying this is for women if you vote yes.
Yeah.
And it's such a false narrative, because if a young lady anywhere in the state of Missouri, if this passes and a young lady goes to get an abortion, she cannot sue the provider that gives the abortion if she is hurt.
Yep.
This takes away the ability to be able to address grievances, basically.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with that.
No.
I'm not okay with that at all.
No.
And there's another huge point in here that really needs to be thought about, and that is the fact that they refer to, instead of, a pregnant woman, which is a normal language when you're talking about pregnancy,
right?
They say pregnant persons.
Yeah.
And
persons.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, I am a Christian who knows and understands the foundation of God's word tells me that God created us man and woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Male and female.
Right.
And that is the foundation.
So I wanted to go back just to your second point. You said something about the transitions, the way they were wording that, which means, again, I don't think a lot of people know this, is now they've opened up the door to do transition surgeries for children.
Yes. So and define it as healthcare.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Yep. And again, another thing that people do not know, because, I get it, right? They want to do exactly what you said. They just want to go to work, pay their bills, get their kids to school and to church and to baseball games and come home, wash, rinse, and repeat. But like you said in the very beginning, when you go to amend the Constitution, first of all, the reason why we have a legislature is so that way you can have those people go to bat for the laws that they need to be done inside the legislature. That's what legislation is all about. And when things can't get done in the those words really confuse me, and they're hard to say, by the way.
Hey, I've been in legislature for 8 years, and I still can't say it right.
when they can't get done in that chamber, let's go that route. Then they want to create these bills to take to the people and amend the Constitution. And the Missouri Constitution is probably, 4 or 5 inches thick when it should really only be about 5 pages.
Yes. And I would like to add a quick point to what you're saying here. My big question is, why does Michael Bloomberg care about what goes into Missouri's Constitution?
Right.
He donated $1 million to try to help pass this.
Right. Well, what it does. You said it earlier. It's all about the money.
That's right.
It's all about the money. Follow the money and you'll follow the problem. And the other thing was the fact that, because I want to say this too about all the amendments. Anytime there's any kind of amend to the Constitution that comes onto the ballot, I would probably tell you 99.9% of the time I'm voting no for it.
Yes, 100%.
Right. The only one is, I think it's Amendment 7. If I'm right, the numbers get me a little confused, but that's the one where they want to change the language to make sure only a U.S. citizen can vote. And I think they're going to make sure there's not a runoff type situation. Okay, that I'm okay with. But
yes, and I am too. Just for the record, since you brought it up, I'll just affirm that I am voting yes on that one.
Yeah, because that one, it's different, right? It is constitutionally clarifying that, hey, I don't want to go through a primary and then all of a sudden the primary means nothing because now you can name your 1, 2, 3. If that person doesn't get it, you get to say, here's my first choice and then my second choice and my third choice. What in the world are we trying to go to, man? I mean, this is getting out of control.
It's called ranked choice voting.
Right.
And I'll just be honest with you. We've already established the fact I'm a conservative Christian first, conservative Republican. Okay.
There you go.
And so this is called ranked choice voting. And this method is how many states have been flipped to what is referred to as a blue state, which is where abortion and all the things that go against our values are welcomed. And I know that you and I share a common belief and dedication to protecting what we have and not, falling to that situation. And what we saw in the legislature was this is a good preventative effort to make sure that people who come after us understand that we do not want a situation where there is compromise to the foundational Judeo-Christian values that have established not only our state but our nation. And I'm a big believer in if we protect our states, then God willing, our nation will be okay at the end of the day. If our states are doing what's right, then I always tell people I'm not too worried about Washington, D.C. If we can just keep the ship somewhat straight in Jeff City.
Yeah. And that's another thing, though. A lot of people do is they only focus on the national elections. They don't think about your state or even your local elections in your own city and county, which are the things that affect you the most anyway.
Every day.
So,
every day.
Man, I mean, you and I guarantee you we could talk for days on this stuff.
I think so too.
We're on the same page. It's funny because I tease Kelly all the time, like, Kelly, you need to talk more about this. You need to talk more about this. And now he is definitely, he's definitely a big advocate about what we're discussing. This abortion law, the Amendment 3. What else are you seeing in that? Because, I mean, you named a lot of great things that a lot of people are not paying attention to. When you think about that, what would be the number one thing with your views and values would be the worst reason why we don't want it to pass, but what would be the worst case if it did pass?
So if it did pass, the best example that I have to give you is this. You think about the marijuana amendment and you think about when that passed. What popped up all across the state of Missouri? Marijuana stores.
Yeah. Well, we got a bunch of them here. Trust me.
Everywhere. And so my concern is what kind of similar reflection are we going to see from the abortion industry?
Yeah, we don't know. Able to do a drive-through abortion.
Exactly. Oh,
like they do the marijuana plants.
You just made me think of something. You're triggering my brain here. In Amendment 3. It only says that a healthcare professional must perform the abortion. Now, I'm sure you're like me. You've encountered people in all levels of the medical industry who rightfully want to call themselves a healthcare professional.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't want first of all, obviously I'm against abortion. But if I'm a young teenage mom and I'm going out here to look for an abortion, who's terming themselves a healthcare professional?
That's right.
To be able to get the money to take the life of my child and traumatize me for the rest of my life.
That's right.
Right.
Yep. 100%.
And so no matter where you land on this issue,
it's dangerous.
Please think about the fact of safety. Yeah. They're like you said earlier, they're trying to say this is for the safety of women. It is the most anti-safety amendment I've seen on the ballot in my lifetime.
Yep. And just yesterday, I believe in a CNN interview with Kamala Harris, she even said that if something like this bill passes, that she will not allow Christian doctors or any doctor that has a faith that is against abortion, that they cannot say no to the abortion, that they actually have to still give the abortion if that healthcare or the patient is their doctor.
And I can feel my blood pressure going up right now. Bill, what's his name? You probably know him. He's on the Fox channel.
Bill Maher?
Yes. He had, I can't remember.
I don't think he's on Fox.
But there's a guy named Bill that does Fox News stuff. And he had a little clip the other day and he said it well. This is Red China stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And he's right.
Yeah.
And the faster we acknowledge and understand that, the better off that our future generations are going to be, because it is Red China stuff. Because another point is I'm sure that the gentleman and his wife that I can't think of his name right now, but they run the pregnancy center in Lebanon.
I do not know them.
You may not. You may not. Okay, sorry.
That's all
Well,
right.
but we all know our local pregnancy centers, generally speaking, and the people who are working every day to help people through those doors.
Mm-hmm.
And if this passes, they have to refer for an abortion. They have to.
That's crazy.
And I mean, what it makes no sense. And the last day in the House of Representatives, when I had the chance to give my farewell speech as a sitting member of the House, I asked the question, what are we without our future generations?
Yeah.
What are we?
Yeah. I had a
And
guy whenever
this this
we were talking to a gentleman. I don't know if you ever heard the organization called Moral Revolution. They're all about intimacy, sex, married couples, and then they talk to the
yeah,
non-married. Anyway, the guy that used to be over that came and spoke at our marriage conference, and he had made a comment. He said, "Listen," he said, "if all those people, transgenders, and all the different whatever that kind of whole gays, lesbians," he said, that's fine if that's what they want to do, because then there's not going to be any of them left when they die off because they're not procreating. And I'm like, well, that
yeah,
is one unique way to look at it for sure, because that is true to agree, but there
yeah,
won't be a future for our
exactly.
children. Or can you imagine what you got to say to your kids, your grandkids one day, and here we are, a generation that's been chosen to fight this
Yeah,
mess. And then we set
yeah,
back, those 104 million Christians set back and do nothing. And then they're going to have to answer to the children one day is how did our world get to the way it is? Well, I'll tell you how. You did nothing about it. That's what happened. You were
that's right.
apathetic and lazy.
That's right. And people, I understand. I'm currently a sitting politician. I get sick of politics.
Yeah.
I get it. We all do. But the facts of it are is the church has got to show up to the polls.
Yeah.
We have got to be the Esthers of our generation, men
Mm.
and women, right?
Yeah.
And we've
Absolutely.
got to be the Daniels. We've got to be the Daniels. And that's what I've been really convicted about lately is, I think of the story of Daniel. Didn't he pray in his window?
Yep.
Was that
Yep.
Daniel that
Yeah, it was him.
prayed in the windows?
Yep.
And
Nebuchadnezzar told
we,
him not to pray. Had little tattletales came
yes,
and said, "Hey, Daniel's in there praying." Even though he
yes,
was in his own bedroom, he did it in front of the window,
yeah,
and they could see him. And then they ratted on him, and then of course he's thrown in the lion's den. You know the story.
yeah.
Yeah, that was him.
But it makes me think of, because you're saying what Kamala's threatening to do to Christian doctors,
Yep.
if bills like this pass, if amendments like this pass. I mean, there's going to be a lot of folks. I think all of us, you, me, all of us, we're going to have our Daniels and our Esther moments where we're going to have to make a choice.
Yep.
What are we going to do?
And
And
we don't
I
even need to
believe
let
whether
it
or
get to
not,
that place.
exactly, whether or not Amendment 3 passes or not, I believe we're already kind of there.
Yeah.
Because, I've been told more than once, Hannah, this thing's polling 60%.
Yeah. That's higher than what I've
Uh,
seen. That's not good.
and well, up in the bigger city areas.
Yeah.
And my
Sure.
response to that is if it is polling 60%, then we're not talking about it enough because I believe if people really understand, if
Mm.
you really understand the enormity of losing parental consent, the enormity of not being able to fight to receive justice for women who were harmed in an abortion, the
Mm-hmm.
enormity of not having a surgeon or a doctor specifically issue, on the because we were talking about that a while ago where they just says healthcare professional.
Right.
You would think that they would want to at least say, hey, doctor or surgeon, for Pete's sake,
Right.
but they don't want to be particular because it's not about safety, it's about money,
That's it.
period.
Yep, yep. That's
Yep.
again, Brian Nieves tells me that all the time. I used to be on his radio show from pretty much every Thursday, and he would always say, "Follow the money on everything politically. Just
Yep.
follow the money, and you'll." I forgot he did. I forgot what it was called, but it said something about follow the money, and it will lead to its logical whatever. I forget the terminology, but you're right. It's
Mhm.
all about the money. It's
You know
insanity,
what?
man.
Tell Brian. I don't know if Brian even knows me, but I know of him.
Uh huh.
And the lady that used to work for him, I met her 9 years ago in a subway in my district, and we've been friends ever since. And she helped me win my first campaign. So I've heard lots of Brian Nieves stories.
He was a bulldog for sure when he was in there.
Yep. Yep.
Um, Well, if there was one thing, I think I already know what your answer is going to be, but I'm going to let you say it again because I think you've already
Okay.
said it. But if there was one thing that you could tell my listeners, the people that are listening to this show, which I don't have a huge following, led. I'm not some famous guy. I don't try to be famous. I just want to try. I believe God will give me a voice to the people that need to hear my voice in the time as whatever he chooses. And I'm just going to be the person that keeps speaking no matter what that looks like. But for the ones that do follow me, what would you say to them? What would you like to say to them for this Amendment 3 and then the election this year?
A vote against Amendment 3 is a vote to protect women. It is a vote to protect children, and it is a vote to protect our state. It is a vote to protect the moral fabric of our state, and it is a vote for the future. If you vote no, you've got to
Yeah.
vote no on it. But overall, the church has got to vote.
Yeah.
And I know there's people who, I know people, I'm sure you know people who are like, I don't like Trump.
Yep.
Well, we're not going to the polls to vote for the perfect person.
That's right.
We're going to the polls to hope to elect a leader that is going to choose life over death.
That's right. Yeah.
And the
I've
Bible
actually
talks about that.
I've actually seen. I mean, I don't like all of everything Trump does and says. I mean, he needs to, he needs to get some things under control. But what
Right.
I have
Right.
noticed in him, especially after the assassination attempt, is I have noticed a change in his demeanor. I've
Yes.
noticed that he's talking more about Jesus and the Christian way.
Yes.
He's more receptive, all that stuff. Which sometimes it takes something like this in order for somebody to really wake up. Maybe he is a Christian, but he's like a majority
Yeah.
of Christians that are just on the fence and they still live their life how they want to, and they haven't fully surrendered to God. Okay,
Yeah.
but you can start to see a difference. But like you said, it's not about, we're
Yes.
not voting for a personality. I'm not even voting for a
Right.
party necessarily. I'm voting for
Right.
policy. That's my kid.
That's
Is
right.
policy,
That's right.
policy, policy. Think about the
Yep.
policy. Does it line up with the biblical worldview? If you're a Christian,
Yes.
you should be doing those things. And if you're not, you're a part of the problem. You're a part of the problem. And believe me, I am a warrior when it comes to Christians in this, not in this sense, because I'm just sick and tired of the capital C church doing nothing,
Yep.
saying nothing. And it's
Yep.
aggravating because we are supposed to be the people that are standing up for. I mean, you look at the Bible, it specifically tells us that we are supposed to find justice for those that can't defend themselves. Guess what? That's that
Yes.
fetus in that womb.
That's right.
And we got to stand
Yep.
up for that no matter what the cost is. I don't care if I lost my life tomorrow for standing up for this. I'd be glad to do it in a heartbeat because I know where I'm going and I have no
Well,
fear.
amen, brother. And that's what, again, is that, I heard this thing about, well, we just, these polls, Hannah, these polls.
Yep.
And I know that we serve a God who parted the Red Sea.
Yep.
And I know we serve a God who used a baby in a basket to lead a nation.
Yeah.
And I know we serve a God who used, what was it, 5 stones? Did David have 5 stones?
Yep. 5 smooth stones.
And the miracles that we know.
Yeah. There's.
And like you said, this generation is called.
Yeah. Yep. We've
And
been
it's
chosen.
heavy on my heart. What we do with choosing, right?
Yeah.
Because then we've been chosen, but then we have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to answer to that. That's so. Just
right.
on a side note, when I talk to my people, like the thing that keeps me grounded, I have a fear of God. I have a healthy fear of the Lord,
Yes.
because the biggest thing is I'm going to meet Him one day, and when I stand
right.
in front of Him, He's gonna. There's going to be a flash of my life that happens that I got to answer to, and the last thing that I want God to say to me is, "You had a chance to save my kids and you did nothing."
Yep.
Oh, I'm in heaven. Good for me. Right?
Right.
I made it under the limbo stick. But heaven's a
Right.
lot, there's a lot more in heaven than what I think we realize. It is a reward system in how we are on this earth, the things that we do on this earth. He rewards
Yes.
us in the future for those things of standing and fighting for these deals.
Yes.
And I don't want to get in front of my God. And He say to me, and I'm not going to say He's going to be disappointed because obviously that's not going to happen. But I do feel like there's a part of me that He's going to say, you had a chance and you did nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. I want my God to say, well done, my good and faithful servant. Even though You know, not all the things that you stood for passed in the things that you were voting on, even though all the things that you stood for didn't happen. You still did what you were supposed to do. And because you did that, you were faithful, and I'll honor you and reward you accordingly.
Amen.
And that is what keeps me grounded. And I don't think enough Christians think that way. All they think about is now, which is a temporary time of our life, not eternity.
I couldn't agree more. And I hear from so many people being in the place of service that I've been in. I get like well-intended accolades and stuff. Oh, Hannah, you're doing great things, or Hannah, go do great things. When actually I feel like God's working on my heart, and very much along the lines of what you just said. But it's like, I don't care whether you are a mom, stay-at-home mom, or the leader of a company, or pastor of a church, or a dad working in the factory. We have a calling in our lives to do what's right within the circles that he's put us.
That's
It's
right.
not about the headlines. It's about, I just believe, whether it's, if it's one more vote on your podcast, then it's one more vote.
That's right. I
You know,
love that.
I'm nobody. I tell people all the time, I'm nobody. And anything good that's happened in my life in the last 8 years has been because of God.
That's it. Yep.
But 45 people were the difference in me going there.
And it could be the same in this amendment.
That's right. That's
So
right.
I would just I want to thank you so much for your time, for coming on here, sharing your heart, your values. It is much appreciated. We thank you, and I want to encourage everybody listening, man, get out and vote, and
Get out and
challenge
vote.
other people to do the same. Get out and vote no on Amendment 3. Hannah,
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to actually meeting you one day. I'll have to set that up with Kelly maybe. He's been asking me to come
I would
down,
love it.
and I'll bring my wife and he and Bridget, and we'll just meet and maybe get lunch or something, and that'd be a great conversation.
I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great weekend.